The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
The North Kesteven series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Welcome back to North Kesteven again, everybody. Now, yesterday we saw Great Hale. Today we're in its twin, and a lot of this episode is going to focus on this behind me. That there is Little Hale Fen, full of gorgeous arable Lincolnshire farmland. Welcome to the parish of Little Hale. Little Hale, nook of land, small. Just to the south of Great Hale, which we covered yesterday, is its smaller brother. Today we're in Little Hale, officially a hamlet and not a village, located on the B1394, some 5 miles away from Sleaford. With approximately 60 houses, it lies on the edge of the Lincolnshire Fens. Little Hale is a lot smaller and a lot more modest than Great Hale. Mind you, there is one thing that the two do share, the fact that they're both largely residential. Little Hale used to be a lot larger actually. In 1881 it sported a population of 362, quite a sizable community for that time. It contained a post office back then, as well as a national school for 60 children. That school building still stands, although it has a different use today. There were pubs too, 2 of them in fact, called the Nag's Head and the Bowling Green, both now sadly lost. The main occupation back then was farming. Wheat, barley, oats, beans, seeds and turnips were all grown around the village. Some of those still are. There were other trades in Little Hale too. It had 2 shopkeepers, a grocer, a draper, a wheelwright and a shoemaker. In many respects, Little Hale was the much more active of the Hale twins, thriving in the fertile Lincolnshire Fens. Gradually over time, whilst Great Hale would develop, Little Hale would decline, but it still remains a pretty tranquil little hamlet surrounded by the flat open fenlands. No wonder then that most of its residents like this place, and I certainly wouldn't mind living here myself. I say that with a huge lump of Lincolnshire bias. Little Hale has been a settlement for a long time, but it's nothing like it used to be. The ever-changing nature of the UK's towns, cities and villages means places evolve, and Little Hale certainly fits that bill. Here in 2025 it's a pleasant little hamlet with 60 houses and a pretty small population. It is, without a doubt, quite a sought-after spot in the Lincolnshire Fens. Now, if we'd been here about 140 years ago, we'd be seeing a much different place. In 1885, Kelly's Directory described Little Hale as a township with a population of 362, a pretty astronomical number given the average size of the Fenland villages back then. Farming was king out here. Crops were grown in pretty much any field going. They were then transported to market via the roads, railways and the canals, all of which were in close enough proximity to Little Hale to make that a relatively easy task. At the peak of its farming endeavours, Little Hale could boast 19 of them. That figure shows you the difference we're talking about here. In its heyday, commercial occupations and trades were 10 a penny. There was a wheelwright, 2 shopkeepers, one of whom ran a post office, and 2 pubs named the Nag's Head and the Bowling Green. There was even a bus service between the village and Sleaford. Owning most of the agricultural land around here were primarily 2 men, the Marquis of Bristol, who was the Lord of the Manor, and Colonel Pack. By 1933, things had begun to alter. Little Hale's population was 264 at that point, a loss of almost a third from 50 years beforehand. This downward trend would continue throughout the years, and slowly this once thriving little settlement began to morph into what we have now. It's now a collection of residential properties, but Little Hale still prides itself on being a desirable location for prospective homebuyers to move to. It has next to no amenities, although hidden away amongst all of the houses are 2 landmarks of note, if nothing else. The Fens were a hotbed of nonconformism. We know that from previous episodes out here. No surprise then that Little Hale still has an active Methodist Chapel, squirreled away down a driveway off Chapel Lane. As an ashlar tablet on the chapel itself confirms, this was originally Primitive Methodist and it dates from 1837. It was altered in the late 19th century. The building is constructed of red brick with yellow brick decorations and it has a pan-tile roof. It retains original interior features including matchboard panelled walls, benches and a preacher's desk. As the only communal building in Little Hale, it's run sort of like a village hall most of the time, hosting things like coffee mornings and an arts and crafts club. Regular worship takes place here every Sunday. Okay, we've reached a junction here where we turn right onto the B1394 back towards Great Hale. At said junction there is this little gate here and you can see a house in the distance there, and between the two there's a pond which I think belongs to that house, but you can get up and close and personal with it because this track here is actually a public footpath. So yeah, it's a feature of Great Hale Village, I suppose. In the other direction we have the main road there. Now Little Hale only really has one more major landmark, and that's an old school which is to the left up there. We're going to head for that shortly. Now, if you're wondering about this bus shelter, there is a little stone above it which tells you what it's all about. Don't know whether you can read it from here, but I'll read it to you if not. Erected by the parishioners of Little Hale in honour of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953. Now, we are here for another reason as well, because as you can see there are two parish notice boards there. You know what that means. One of these is going to be left. I hate boards like this because there's nowhere to put the card. I just have to slot it underneath as best I can. There we go, that'll do it. Okay, the old school. Now, of course, given how big Little Hale used to be, it was more than large enough to sustain a school. This here is that very building. It was a national school, built to hold a maximum of 60 children. The attendance never was that many, although it was regularly in the 50s. Now no longer a school, today it's known as Parva House. Parva is the Latin term for small, much like magna means great or large. It's ideal for Little Hale. Parva House is alternatively known as the Lincolnshire South Guides Training and Activity Centre. It's a base for girl guiding in the south of the county. The Guides bought the old school in 1972 and promptly converted it into a building that could provide facilities for residential experiences and training. Over the years, through the efforts of fundraising, grants and donations, a number of extensions and improvements have been made to it. Little Hale doesn't possess a lot more. The distinctive red BT telephone box opposite the old school is owned by the parish council and was refurbished in 2012 as a book swap. A defibrillator was later installed in 2015. Little Hale and Great Hale share a cemetery too, by the way, which is run by an independent joint burial committee. It's located between the two villages on the main road linking them. It seems to me that a lot of Little Hale residents are quite interested in the idea of there being a video about the village on YouTube. I hope I'm doing a good job. I've had at least 2 people approach me this morning and ask me exactly what this is all about. Well, if you're watching, folks, this is what it's all about. Oh, that was a bird scarer. It was quite loud, wasn't it? Right, let's head out into the Fens and talk a bit more about all this gorgeous Lincolnshire farmland and why the Fens are actually the reason that Little Hale is such a small village these days. So, why did Little Hale decline so much? The first half of the 19th century had been a time of exceptional growth, and yet it all evaporated within 100 years or so. Come with me for a drive into Little Hale Fen while we dive into the reasons why. Covered by rich arable farmland as it is, it seems after all to be the most appropriate place to explain. A good indicator of what happened is what's written in White's Directory for the years 1856 and 1892. These show 22 names in the later entry against 18 in the earlier. In both, 13 of them are farmers, with an increase of those who were on the fen. This is perhaps an indication of the splitting of holdings which was beginning to take place in the latter half of the 19th century. Essentially, farmers were giving up land or selling it, if you will, to others. Whilst this looks on paper to be a good thing, it wasn't. It was an indication that industry was altering. This was a time, after all, when the number of other non-farming related occupations was on the rise, a lot of them based within towns as opposed to the countryside. Journeys to the nearest town were becoming increasingly easier too, what with the coming of the railways in the 1840s and 50s. People were learning that they could better themselves in jobs that didn't rely on the land, a much better life, if you will. Put simply, Little Hale's farmers were forced to give up their land because it could no longer support the hands it once did. There was still an income to be made on the Fens. Farming didn't disappear completely, but it was nothing like what it once was. Of the 18 names listed at the beginning of that 36-year span between the directory entries, only 2 are identical, John Green and John Hutchinson. These guys must have either been the hardiest of the farmers in Little Hale or the wealthiest. Take your pick. So you can see now what effect this must have had on the village, right? Gradually, people moved away with the promise of a better life elsewhere. Some stayed, of course, but with the number ever declining, businesses in the village simply couldn't continue thanks to the sheer lack of footfall. This is a story that could be replicated for a lot of farming reliant villages across the country. And that's pretty much that for both the Hale twins. One a story of 20th century growth, the other a tale of decline, but the Hales both remain desirable fenland villages. Coming next, we have a village of a similar size to this. Get ready for another Burton. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.